Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're going to do a recap of this week in cannabis from March 1st to the 7th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, all I ask is that you leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel, and I do appreciate it. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational opportunity, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. But I'd recommend going back and watching episode 3 and 4 of Reality Check Cannabis in 2020. Those videos will introduce you to the U.S. multi-state operators and the top Canadian licensed producers. These are companies that can legally operate and do business in cannabis in the U.S. and then in Canada. So it'll introduce you to the top players. Then you can watch episodes of This Week in Cannabis and see basically what we were anticipating going into the election, what the election results mean, and all the catalysts that we are talking about going forward. Now, this past week has been the most difficult for a cannabis investor that I've seen in a very long time. And now I can hold strong and not even let the emotions get to my head at all, which is amazing. But so I want to point out for you, if you did not sell this week, kudos. That is successful investing, because next week is when the earnings start, and I mean, this data is going to just reassure why you want to be invested and not having sold. But if you could buy the dip last week, I hope you bought all the dips. I bought more dips on Tuesday and Wednesday than I wanted to, and then realized on Thursday and Friday I could have bought more. But again, it's always a lesson. It is ultimately a lesson. And I just think I just want to point out, whoever was selling shares last week, thank you. Thank you. That is unsuccessful investing, and I will gobble up as many of them as I can with what cash I have. But fundamentally, we're going to go through why, cannabis is just going to keep going, chugging along on track. And again, just whoever was selling last week clearly did not know what they were investing in. Maybe people that have someone managing their money and they have 1% of their portfolio in risky cannabis, and they just see red and they go, okay, no, take me out of there, without actually knowing the fact that BioSteel reports global cannabis sales exceeded $21 billion in 2020, forecasts $55.9 billion by 2026. And so that will be an increase of 166% from now to 2026 for global sales. Now, what we want to do is find out the breakdown of these sales, though. This is the most important part. Now, a few things to mention, though. The cannabis industry faced numerous challenges in the past years, none so potentially disruptive as the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, obviously. I mean, the other obstacles, the 280E tax, not being able to open bank accounts, having to work in cash, not having lines of credit, those are real obstacles, but that hasn't even stopped them. So pandemic, nothing. Now, our previous forecast was conservative based on the expected economic fallout from the pandemic, but the industry not only survived, it thrived, and legal cannabis gained considerable ground, exceeding our expectations. Led by Colorado, grew by 26%, Oregon 39%, and these are already like the biggest markets. Canada, our market grew by 61% in 2020. It didn't. It grew by 100%. It went from 1.2 billion to 2.6 billion. So I'm not sure why it's saying 61, because we went from 1.2 to 2.6. Anyways, that's a bit bizarre. But again, of course, the other thing too is Arizona and New Jersey having just been opened up and just signed the bill. Sales in Arizona have started, not in New Jersey, but they will commence, and that is a population of 7 million in Arizona and 8 million in New Jersey. Now, this is again the breakdown of where sales are coming from. The U.S. legal cannabis sales in the U.S. passed 17.5 billion in 2020, growth of 46% over 2019's 12.1 billion. That's massive. And BDSA forecasts U.S. sales to reach 41.3 billion by 2026, a compounded annual growth rate of 15%. So they expect it to double from where it is now, at least by 2026. Illinois, which launched adult use last year, saw the largest dollar gain in 2020, raising $784 million. And this is again from a state that legalizes adult use and previously has medical cannabis legal. So allowing adult use sales sees significant increase in the dollar amount. And that's what we're going to see from Minnesota, from Maryland, Michigan, all these states that just legalized for adult use. We're going to see that out of Arizona now, which is amazing. Now, Canada, though, again, sales totaled $2.6 billion in 2020, forecasted to grow to $61.4 billion in 2026. But again, I think we should point out that they grew over 100% from $1.2 billion in 2019. And again, this is not helped by this 2.0 offering. No, that's nonsense. It's helped by stores. You need stores so that people can legally go buy access, because they don't want to buy it online from the government, things like that. You need stores. Legal access takes access away from the black market. It's just a fact. Now, international markets, sales of legal cannabis products, including cannabis-derived pharmaceuticals outside the U.S. and Canada, broke the 1 billion mark for the first time ever in 2020. Nearly 1.1 billion in spending. That's amazing. Now, they forecast this will exceed 8.3 billion in 2026, which is a compounded annual growth rate of 40%. And the bulk of this new spending will be driven by Mexico, which will have 104% compounded annual growth rate, or expected. Germany, 36%. Through the UK, 57%. And France, 186%. Now, just to point out, though, right now, I don't know of any companies that are operating in Mexico. Well, VFF is a vegetable distribution company, so they're very unique as they have that distribution chain from Canada, the US, and Mexico. And I think once Mexico comes online in the US, they will open that up. But as of right now, I don't know many other countries except for Kiron Life, which is one that's associated with Mexico. So I'd have to do more research into that, but it seems as if Mexico is where you would get the most potential growth return in the next few years. Germany as well. I mean, that's why I own Aphria, because I want this over time, and I know that Aphria is going to get me that. The UK, this is the tough part. I don't know any countries that are supplying the UK yet. So if you want to try and find a company that is making this money, the UK, maybe their sales grew from a couple 100,000 to 1 million, which is seeing this growth, but in time, and this applies for France as well. I know France launched their pilot program, and they've invited companies to want to supply it, but they don't make revenue for doing that, right? So it's more of like trying out for the future. But so again, I would not try to invest for these markets yet because they haven't even developed. They're still in talks. Now, again, that is why, though, the emphasis, folks, is, again, I'm telling you, the U.S. is where you want to be. And then in the next few years, you can start looking at some of these more potential international markets. But again, if you want Germany, Aphria is your best bet, 1,000%. Now, and so on top of that data, basically telling us sales are huge. And so main thing to point out that tells us that demand for cannabis is increasing in states and in countries globally. And as more states legalize, the demand will continue to increase. And the fact that we have 16 states legal for adult use and there's 36 left that are, 34 left that have still not legalized, that means that demand will continue to increase because these states can only legalize as quickly as the lawmakers allow them to. And so the last thing is that demand is so strong that more supply is required everywhere, but because of limited government regulation, it's very slow to increase the ability to supply. And the fear that you have is, what if we oversupply? What if we supply too much, which has happened in Canada? Well, thanks to the US population and the slow law changes, we're in this perfect sweet spot of constant demand and constant undersupply. And again, the more that states just legalize, then demand will that supply will be able to fit that demand, but then more states will then legalize, more demand, more need to supply. It's just, we're in the perfect scenario, and this growth is just going to keep going. And the current flash report data shows cannabis consumers are spending 25% more amid the pandemic. So again, we have sales increasing, we've got consumers spending more than ever. Average cannabis purchases went from 60 up to 60 from 48, from 2.25 products to 2.6. The average size sale is up from 125 to 100. And again, this is just to point out that we're only for the first time tracking how much Americans smoke cannabis, right? Or how much Canadians. This is just, it's something that we never tracked before. So a lot of these headlines will say, Americans are smoking more cannabis than ever. We don't actually know that. Americans have always smoked cannabis, like Canadians have always smoked cannabis, like people around the world have always smoked cannabis. It's only because we're actually tracking it that we can see this. But again, if you're looking for a fast-growing industry, you want to be invested in the one that is growing, right? And all of these numbers are increasing over time, which is amazing. So again, what a week that was last week. Just wish I had more cash for Thursday and Friday, but again, it's always a lesson going forward, and there's going to be more opportunities. Now, former President Fox, Vicente Fox, expects Mexico to pass landmark cannabis bill next week. So we had April 1 as a potential date to look forward to. Well, the former Mexican president, who is now a cannabis entrepreneur, if you can believe that, folks, you just got to follow the money. And there's a ton of money in cannabis. That's what led me to it. Former Mexican president Vicente Fox said on Friday he expects Congress to pass a new law to legalize cannabis next week, a move that would effectively create one of the largest legal markets. And just point out, so Fox is now a director at Colombian Canadian Kiron Life Sciences. That's the company I mentioned. I haven't looked into them much, not on my radar, but now because of this update, it might actually get on my radar. I'm going to take a look. Now, which focuses on cannabis for medical use, has been a long-standing advocate for decriminalization of cannabis in Mexico. If you can imagine the former president having to deal with cartels, he's like, yeah, there's got to be better ways to deal with this. How about making a legal market and taking away from the black market, which could have been done a long time ago. Now, the good news is that yesterday the stimulus bill passed. So that has been done with. That was obviously the Senate's priority for a long time. And they've gotten that. So for anyone saying, Schumer said he would, it hasn't. Look, keep in mind, 2021 has 365 days, and it's only March 7th. It's so early, and I know it can feel like forever, but we just have to give them time to stick to their word. And he's working alongside Senator Booker and Ron Wyden on legislation for comprehensive reform. We must end federal prohibition on cannabis, make criminal justice reforms, and ensure equity for communities, especially those of color impacted. So now that the COVID stimulus bill has passed and is done with, they can start moving towards their next objectives, where this is one of them. So again, for anyone that's saying, they should act faster, It's easy to say that. It's easy to say they could do better. What's harder is for you to sit patient and just, wait for them to do what they say they're going to do. And just point out, when was the last time you ever saw the Senate Majority Leader tweet that he's going to legalize cannabis or that they need to legalize cannabis? Never. We've never seen anything like this before. So instead of being, salty about it and thinking, assuming, it could be better, we have to go off of the facts and we just have to be patient and hope that these, politicians are going to keep their word. And then that's our job as citizens to hold them accountable. And I know Americans will. I trust Schumer's going to do this, or at least he's going to pass SAFE first, and then the reform is going to come. But again, before the end of 2021, there's a lot of time. But regardless, again, this is rare. You don't see this from politicians, so appreciate it. It's been a long time since we've had sensible people in power. Now, Cresco Labs to report their fourth quarter and fiscal year on March 25th. This makes me so excited because that's what I was waiting for. And then look at this, folks. We literally have Curaleaf on March 9th, Acreage on March 10th. And I'm just going to go through the MSOs because, again, there's obviously LPs too. But Air Wellness, March 11th. Columbia Care, March 16th. Village Farm, that's Canadian. Green Thumb Industries, March 17th. Terra Ascend, March 23rd. TrueLeaf, March 23rd. Charlotte's Web, March 25th. And Cresco Labs, March 25th. Grow Generation, the Home Depot of cannabis, March 25th as well, so it'll be nice to see that. With Hexo and Sundial, I'm very nervous about their earnings. Hopefully, they've been able to clean up their balance sheet. That will be great. But Village Farms International should show that they're continuing to take more market share. And with their very little debt, that's a very healthy, again, Canadian LP prospect. But this is amazing. This is all to come next week. So again, whoever was selling shares last week, you had to have not known that this was all coming. And if you sold, sorry, thank you, so that I could buy more. And then again, if you could buy the dips, good on you, folks. That is, again, when you have a good investment and you get the opportunity to buy shares on sale to decrease your average cost, take that opportunity. Now, again, there's times in your life where you might think it's an opportunity and you could be wrong. And, I'm taking that risk of potentially being wrong. But again, I use the underlying information and all the real data and the facts and evidence to at least try and reassure myself before I average down on anything that, I'm losing money on. But again, now, I don't know what Curaleaf's going to do, but this analyst, what is his name? Roth Capital Partners analyst Scott Fortune has a buy rating of Curaleaf at 20 for their US ticker, for their OTC ticker, which again is an increase for the Canadian one. But what are they expecting? They're thinking that, Curaleaf's fourth quarter is going to be big based on the growth of their third quarter, and looking ahead to 2021, which we're not even going to see yet. We're only seeing, again, sales from October, November, December. But Fortune said Arizona and New Jersey will be key growth markets for Curaleaf as they continue to expand and benefit from their recent grassroots acquisition as well, putting them in those states. So Roth is calling for a fourth quarter EPS loss of 2 cents, down slightly from 1 cent loss in the third quarter. But again, this is the fourth quarter, and this is from their expansion and potentially why they might see a loss. But they're also targeting $239 million, up 31% sequentially, and this would be record revenue. But to point out, for their whole 2020 fiscal year, because again, when you announce your Q4 full fiscal year, the Q4 is for that one quarter, but then the full fiscal year covers Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and this is where we're looking at Curaleaf, to have the full year EPS of profitable 14 cents on revenue of 1.25 billion, up 96.8. This would be next year. So again, rephrase that. In 2021, they're expecting their whole year they will be profitable, revenue up to 1.25 billion. So again, next year, they're going to make more than Zoom. And again, I just use that as an example where Zoom, I haven't checked lately, but at one point they're up over 100 million or 100 billion market cap, making 622 million in 2022. Curaleaf is going to post more than that, and they're sitting at like 10 billion USD. It's unbelievable. I don't know how much it can rise, but there's a lot of room. That's all I know. And then Columbia Care, although they are reporting their numbers on, what day was it for them? The 16th. This is for them just like an early flex. They're like, we're so proud of our progress. We're just going to put these out early before it's been audited and completed kind of thing. But again, if we're looking at quarter over quarter growth from Q3 to Q4 and then year over year growth from Q4 2019 to Q4 2020, 51%, 54 million up to 81, 21 million up to 33 of their gross profit. And then again, from a year ago, 234%, 24.5 million up to 81 million. That's amazing. And then they're giving guidance for next year, 500 to 530 million, 47% gross margin, and then EBITDA profitability of 100 million. So again, this is just Columbia Care putting this out there, flexing, just being like, yeah, we feel really good about our progress. And again, they're going to continue to expand in these new markets that are going to see a lot of the growth. Again, this is such a unique opportunity. So just pointing that out for the US MSOs, lots to look forward to in the coming weeks. Tom Engel highlights in this cannabis bill reforms, and this was just on Wednesday. So I made my Wednesday video in the morning. I post that in the morning, and then Wednesday after, we have updates from Alabama. So although they legalize medical, now they're looking to decriminalize adult use already. So that bill is been approved to go through the House and now the Senate. Now Hawaii cannabis legalization bill heads to the Senate floor, and then Minnesota legalization bill, their House committee approves. They're the third House committee. So again, we're just seeing progress. Fantastic. Efforts underway to legalize recreational cannabis in Missouri. Missouri is a state we haven't heard of, but guess who's leading these efforts? It's not a politician. No, it's a local couple helping write a petition that could put a constitutional amendment on the 2020 ballot. So again, folks, I've said this many times. It's individuals that make change. At some point you get fed up and you're like, no, I don't want things to be this way anymore. I think it could be better if we allow legal medical cannabis and adult use, just because why not? Jobs, tax relief, all this stuff. But like, you literally have to have a local couple, two individuals leading the way for an entire state, when, it should be the politician's job realizing what's right in front of their noses, right? But so just to point out, like, they opened the first medical dispensary in Kansas City. Now they want to expand the recreational market. We're all for full legalization of cannabis that nobody goes to jail for, and it's not a crime. Just to point out that, like, it's individuals that say at some point, I've had enough, I'm not taking this anymore, that bring change. So just to point out, like, I'm so happy to see that. That is awesome. Now, Michigan, their jobs doubled from 9,216 in 2019 to 9,216 jobs were added in 2020, bringing them to total of 18,000 jobs. And cannabis sales in Michigan fell just shy of $1 billion in 2020, 988 million. But again, this is from Michigan opening their adult use market not long ago, and then their first adult use marijuana stores opened in 2019. So like Illinois, Michigan started in December of 2019 as opposed to January 2020. And now their customer base of 2020 drove sales from 420 million to 420 million to 990 million. This is adding adult use to medical. So again, that is where the growth comes in, folks. And again, jobs, fastest growing, like states that don't have access to cannabis for medicinal at all or adult use, they need jobs. Like, legalize so you can give them jobs, my goodness. And then bipartisan bill to legalize cannabis introduced in Pennsylvania. Again, this is a population of 12 million on the East Coast, so we're hoping that this will kind of run along with Connecticut and New York. But a 2019 legalization bill died in the committee, so it's just nice to see this being reintroduced, as Governor Tom Wolf as well has said many times that he wants to see progress on this. And then lastly, just for this title, cannabis legalization could curb opioid crisis in West Virginia. Governor says, we know it curbs this crisis. And I just want to point out that it's a politician being vulnerable in a way and telling what he thinks is true without actually knowing all the information. And that's rare. I'll just tell it like it is. I'm not educated enough to make a really good assessment of it yet, but I can tell you this. I do believe that this is coming, and the wave is coming across all our states. And as the wave comes, if our House Republicans and Democrats and Senate Republicans and Democrats will get behind that effort from a standpoint of legalization of recreational cannabis, and they would be supportive of that, I would too. Oh my God. So basically he's saying, if everyone else supported it, I would too. As opposed to just, educating himself and being a leader. But just to point out that, like, for this title, marijuana could curb opioid crisis in West Virginia, Governor says, we know that it does. Like, access to medical cannabis reduces opioid prescriptions. Harvard study, we know this. So, maybe it's just an educated individual has to show someone that's uneducated the truth, and then they can make that decision easier themselves, So this governor of West Virginia doesn't have to wait for everyone else to get behind it. He can make the decision himself. Because again, second study, authored in 2014, published in JMA, which showed that states with medical legal cannabis had a 25% lower mean annual opioid overdose mortality rate compared with states without medical cannabis laws. So the fact that opioid overdose deaths appear to be falling in states with medical cannabis laws complements this new research that suggests that fewer opioids are being prescribed. We know this. So it's just about getting that information out there. And so although these states are, again, starting the conversation and just bringing this potential change to the floor, these states could legalize next in 2021. And we've seen this: New Mexico, New York. So just refreshing you on how many states intend to do it this year. Connecticut intends to do it this year. Minnesota intends to do it this year. Florida, thing is, they actually intend to do it in 2022. They have yet to say that they intend to do it this year. But again, that's a population of 20 million. New York, again, population of 20. Pennsylvania, population of 12. Hawaii, they are in progress of these bills and they are passing through the House. And Maryland, another population of about 6 million, with, again, medical already legal, but they see that the benefit of it legalizing for adult use, especially the amount of tax revenue that they can bring in from that. Now, to jump to MSOs briefly, pot producer Green Thumb partners with Gwyneth Paltrow's Back Beverage brand. Again, they're trying to get into markets that they see doing well. And so Green Thumb said it would make and distribute Gwyneth Paltrow's Back THC and CBD infused sparkling water can in the U.S., banking on the brand's early success in California and rising demand for cannabis drinks. So as we saw on Wednesday, cannabis drink sales did increase by 40%, so they're becoming more popular. People want to try them. And so what it appears to me is Green Thumb is saying, okay, this has worked in California. How can we take this, make it profitable, cost efficient for us, and get this into Illinois and New Jersey, where we have our footprints, which recently legalized recreational cannabis. So, again, this is a way and a plan. Top cannabis operators across North America are trying to establish early dominance in the drinks market, a product considered to be more socially acceptable than smoking is. Well, if this is growing really quickly and they can see this growing, why has Green Thumb been raising so much money? Well, this is going to cost money to produce and help expand, right? So it's just all in, if companies are raising money, but they have a plan with what to do with it, and there's, this much expected growth, it makes sense. Whereas if there's a company that's just buying other companies up and then they raise money, but, their revenues are not increasing, that is where you get worried about more raises. Now, and dilution. Now, Trulieve opens brand new Tampa and Clearwater dispensaries. I should just say, dilution does suck. No one wants it, but at least you can feel better about it as opposed to feeling like, you're being diluted out of Aurora again, kind of thing. So Trulieve opens brand new Tampa and Clearwater dispensaries. So again, Trulieve not putting out much news other than the fact that they just keep expanding in Florida, where they have the most market share already, over 50%. So they got their 81st and 82nd dispensary nationwide. Trulieve keeps executing while they're also expanding into Pennsylvania, and they recently just got those slots in West Virginia. So that's huge. Now, just to point out, Dallas Mavericks star Luka Doncic takes equity stake in sports drink company BioSteel. This is awesome, and just something that, again, to complement Canopy on their ability to sign, the right people or get the right marketing out there, get behind the right people. In 2019, cannabis firm Canopy Growth purchased a majority stake in BioSteel. So reason I'm referring to this is that Canopy does own them, and CBD is obviously getting massive with athletes. So Canopy's going really big on the CBD approach, which makes sense. Someone has to be doing it. It does take a long time to go through these trials and all this and to introduce them for the first time, but again, someone's got to do it. That's why they're called the trailblazers, the people to do these things first. Now, the firm wants to continue its growth in the U.S. market and get more retail shelf space in grocery stores, gas stations, and convenience stores for its BioSteel sports drink. But the main thing to think, they've got Patrick Holmes, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Camilleri, former an NHL player, but now they're diversifying into NFL, NBA. I do think it's ultimately good because, we saw Gatorade being all the fuss in 20,000s, or at least when I was young and I played hockey, it was all about Gatorade. Eventually, it could all be about BioSteel and drinking CBD because, it's better for you than any other sort of Advil for muscle pains and stuff. So anyways, just pointing out that, again, Canopy, they've got Snoop, Martha Stewart, Seth Rogen. They're so good at just getting people with large fan bases and introducing their products that way. It's one approach. But again, over time, they just want to make sure. I just want to point out: does this news make them any money? Probably not. They probably actually not, right? Because if they're giving Luka Doncic an equity stake, the Canopy's diluting what they own of BioSteel as well. So I should have picked up on that. But although Canopy puts out a lot of news, you want to see news that's making revenue. Main thing. Now, Ontario sold $250 million worth of cannabis in October to December 2020. You can get the full quarterly report here for the Ontario Cannabis Store for, I think it was their third quarter, which would be July. Anyways, I forget the numbers, but you can get that here. I will actually do a standalone video for this soon. But just to point this out, $250 million amounts to 31% of all legal cannabis sales across the country. Hence, why I've been saying for so long, Ontario matters because it's population, right? And just to run through, for anyone that owns LPs, we know by looking through this report that most sales come from retail stores and most sales come from dried flower, come from vapes, and come from pre-rolls. Although beverages are increasing as regulations loosen a bit, they're only making a couple million a quarter compared to the amount that dried flower, vapes, and pre-rolls are making. So again, if you want to look at which Canadian licensed producer you should invest in, you want to see who's making the most money in dried flower, who's making the most vapes, and who's making the most in pre-rolls, plus who has a footprint into Europe, potentially like Germany in those markets. Now, just to go through, as we can see, Pure Sun Farms, which is VFF, has taken over the market share in Ontario. And I've been saying this for a long time. The only two Canadian LPs I would ever consider owning, that I ever did own, was Aphria. Well, I did own Aurora a long time ago, but Aphria and Village Farms International going forward. I would not own any other ones, mainly for this reason, though. Pure Sun Farms has taken over the Ontario market share, while Aphria is still second place. Good Supply is behind them. And then we also have Hexo in here, Redecan, Aurora, Tweed, Cannabis. So it's nice to see some of these other companies appearing. But again, VFF and Aphria have the flower market, hands down. And then if we go to vapes, Redecan, Good Supply, Aurora, Back 40, sorry, I don't know who that is, and Pure Sun Farms is Village Farms International. So again, if we look at vapes, well, Redecan, private company, you can invest in them. They're doing really well. Good Supply, 14%, daily special. So again, and then if we look at the OCS, keep in mind, retail stores do about 3 times the amount of money that OCS does. So you want to have, like, there's more money being made here in the retail stores than in the OCS. But again, vapes, Hexo seems to be number 1 on the government store, selling for cheap, very good. Then Aurora, then we have Soleil, Good Supply, which is a free again, and then Redecan, and then again, pre-rolls, Redecan, Good Supply, Riff, Trailblazer, OGI, good to see them, Soleil, pre-rolls, Redecan, Aphria, I don't know who Highway is, I apologize, and then Soleil again is Aphria. So who I'm seeing the most on here, Village Farms and Aphria. I'm just going to repeat that. Something to point out, but this is an interesting thing if you want to check in on what's happening in Ontario and Canadian licensed producers. Now, last thing, decline in banks working with cannabis businesses has leveled off according to new federal data. So now, where I would see this happening, in November 2019, there were 747 banks and credit unions working with cannabis companies. And for whatever reason, this has fallen to 684. I imagine this could potentially have been because of the Cole memorandum being redacted that Jeff Sessions had done under Trump. That might play a factor, but basically what this means is that right now there are 515 banks that, regardless of the federal laws, are like, we're going to take the risk because we want the income and we want to work with these companies. And of course, you can take that risk, but the federal law also makes it a risk that they can come and shut you down just because of this. So that's where, that's why only 515 banks are doing it and 169 credit unions are. But get this fact, as of 2019, there are 4,519 banks in the US. So once the Safe Banking Act were to pass and all banks in the US do not have fear of federal prosecution to potentially come and close them down, this number could increase up to 4,519 banks, because why wouldn't banks want one of the fastest growing US industries working with them, right? It only makes sense. And credit unions, only 169 working with cannabis companies. As of 2020, there are 5,164 credit unions. So this just goes to show that this is only what's being used, but the potential, again, there are 4,519 banks in the US and 5,164 credit unions. So point is that as of the end of this could happen, while the number of banks and credit unions seem working with cannabis market seems to be stabilizing, that trend could shift significantly upwards if congressional legislation to protect those institutions from being penalized by federal regulators is approved. And again, folks, just to remind you, the lawmakers could approve the Safe Banking Act in the coming weeks, in the coming months, or they could put this, just to remind you, the Safe Banking Act was included in last year's COVID relief packages, but Mitch McConnell said, no, we're not passing them because Mitch was anti-cannabis. And so again, these politicians that lead the Senate, the Democratic majority, still plan to pass SAFE. And although Democratic leadership in the House, meanwhile, declined to put the Safe Banking Act in the latest Corona bill, unfortunate, but we still have the new nominee for top treasury saying that this is, he sets expectations for financial institutions to provide services to cannabis-related industries. So that's one thing. Someone incoming saying that they will make changes. And again, the IRS Commissioner, Charles Rettig, saying that he would prefer cannabis businesses to be able to get bank accounts so they could pay their taxes electronically instead of with cash. So just to remind you that the COVID stimulus bill has passed. So now these lawmakers can move on to what was next on their list, which will eventually be criminal justice reform. So again, a positive that the SAFE will come very soon. And folks, I just wanted to remind you because I said that I would stop making any movements, but I have adjusted my portfolio as well. And this is just to recap. Look, when on February 10th and February 11th, I saw my Aphria gains go from 130 to 39, 130,000 to 39,000, like that overnight. So it just goes to show the power of equity. Now, if we look at my situation there, 69% of my portfolio, 86,000 was all gains. And again, I agree, I made a mistake. And that's why I'm sharing with you guys. I did make a big mistake. I totally could have sold for a massive portion, but that wasn't my plan. Ultimately, I just wanted to make sure Aphria got to a certain point where I could start taking profits and then start moving those profits into Harvest and Cresco, and Vireo and the other MSOs, right? But like, just to show, 69% was in Aphria. Then the next morning, 59% was in Aphria. And this was just because Aphria had lost so many of the gains itself, but Cresco Lab was chilling where it was. Harvest was chilling where it was, right? So my goal was to document, and I've been able to do that, is getting Aphria profits into my US MSOs. So I'm taking the equity I've created and I'm moving it into companies where I see more upside. And this just makes me really proud to show you where I am today. And although I bought the dip, I bought some dip on Tuesday, I bought some dip on Wednesday, and I bought some dip on Friday. Realizing like, yeah, I could have waited and been patient, and not spent that cash on Tuesday or Wednesday and spent that cash on Thursday or Friday. But again, it's a lesson, and ultimately I spent cash only because it would either give me a lower average cost, or it would make me own more shares of a company I want to own. Nothing more, nothing less. And I'm basically always asking myself before these decisions, does this make sense? Like, am I okay with this? Do I want this? And if I think about it, I try to quiet my mind. And if it says yes, I can't think of any reason why not to. But so what I've been able to do is, look, if you see, I don't know, but so my equity is now at just 89,899. So most people think, oh, I had 150 a couple years ago. Again, it was unrealized gains, but this is what I'm most proud of. As you can see, now Aphria is 36.9% of my portfolio, but I only have 9,000 book value invested in Aphria. And it's still my largest holding, but again, this is mostly gains that I have unrealized, but I still want to hold on to long term. But now what I've been able to do is now 26% of my portfolio, 26% is in Cresco, and that's not even gains, that's cash. Like, I've got 26 grand that I've put into Cresco now, and I'm so happy. And I've been able to do that and get my cost below $18 a share. So that's, again, something that, hey, I rushed the ball. I was able to buy more on Friday at a low price that got me under 18, but again, it's all just a learning curve, right? And these opportunities will come in the future. So it doesn't help to be hard on yourself, but it does help to admit these mistakes and try to learn from them. Harvest Health, I now have 10,500 invested in Harvest Health on its own. And for example, I'm down on Cresco right now. It closed on Friday at $16.51. My average price is $17.97. Do I look worried? Absolutely not, because I know what's coming. And then Vireo, I have 8,800 in there. But again, just goes to show that my goal was to increase my holdings in these US MSOs, because again, although Aphria is a great company and they became overvalued, now they're more fair valued now. Again, yes, the goal is to get cash into what you think is undervalued. And so again, now I've got 8,800 in Vireo. I've managed to get 3,500 in Tilt, basically. And hey, just to point out, a lot of the profits that I had from Aphria, I put into Kirkland Lake Gold. And unfortunately, gold has just been on a tumble these past few weeks. And so, like, obviously in hindsight, I'm like, I could sell my Kirkland at a loss and put that into Cresco as well. Maybe the cash would be better off in cannabis, but at the same time, I'm not getting mad at myself for doing that. And I'm just saying, look, that has a purpose in here and that will be realized in the future. So it's always just making sure that the decisions and the changes you're making are okay with you and not based on what someone's told you to do or an option. Like, always take in information, but then just give time to think about it so that you can relay that information and make sure that it's valuable with what you want to do. So again, though, I'm just so happy. Now I'm 26%. I have so much cash in these MSOs now where I wanted it to, so I'm just so much happier with my position, and like, I just feel better about it than I even did here, and although my equity is, again, it's been lowered because with all these catalysts in the future to come, I no doubt see Tilt being able to maybe 5x, just because there's such a margin of safety on that company. If I can turn that 3.5 into 15, boom. Vireo, turn that 88 into 36, because again, they're trading at 385 my share. If I get them up to 12 at one point. Harvest at $4.23. They are with the Arizona growth, if I can turn that 10 into 40, I just see so much potential. And then Cresco Labs, again, with the growth that we're going to see with Curaleaf, Green Thumb Industries, Trulieve, and then Cresco coming last. I'm very excited for that. And again, long term, like, what this does, though, is it leaves me with very little cash now to average down. But again, I don't think there's going to be any need, because on Monday, I think we'll probably see a rebound. We might see it fall even more. But then on Tuesday, after market, we know that that Curaleaf is starting the earnings trend. And so just to go back, this is where I sit now with the changes I've made. I did end up selling all of my HMUS. And I did end up selling 174 shares of RioCan. So just to look back, I bought RioCan in the summer at a very low cost, and it's done me well, but I had the realization that, like, you know what? 3,000 of this is, 3,500 of this is going to grow a lot more quickly if I put it into Cresco. And so that's what I did. And then HMUS again, this was on about Wednesday. I was like, you know what? HMUS was at like 10.50, but again, my average price was 7.4. So I was still up. And when you're still up, if you're not taking profits, then that's just straight greed. And that's something I've realized as well. So at 10.50, I sold all my HMUS, and I put some of that, again, more into Cresco and more into Tilt, actually. So I didn't own Tilt here now, but now I have 5,000 shares of Tilt. Again, my Vireo and my Harvest holdings have not changed, mainly because my average cost is lower than my average price. And so when you're up, you don't need to make any changes. Again, as you can see with Cresco, I'm down. I would love to have more cash to buy in, and of course I could sell some free and whatnot, but again, I'm happy with that. And I don't need to make anyone else happy. As long as I'm happy, I'm good, right? So, and again, as you can see, I've sold off RioCan, but in the long run, I think that once I have future profits, and again, I do like to own a small number of shares of companies that I want to increase my my ownership in the future. So again, I may only have 15% of Brookfield Renewable Partners, but again, over time, on any dips, I want to own them so I can keep a look at their price over time, and then know that if ever this falls, I can put more cash into that. Same with H2O Innovation. Same with RioCan now, essentially. And then the other just hiccup I want to mention is that Tetra Biopharma on February 10th, when that got up to $5,000 and was trading at 35 cents. And since then it's fallen back to 16. So this is multiple times where TBP's gotten back up to my average price, and I've just held on to it, and it's fallen all the way back down. So again, I'm not mad about it. It sucks. I could have obviously sold and then bought back in and gotten 28,000 shares at 16. It's a lesson, right? So, but main thing is just, if you make mistakes, admit it in investing, because only when you admit a mistake can you then kind of move up from it. But anyways, I just wanted to share this all with you, because as of March 5th, this is where I am, and I do not plan to make any changes as of right now. We'll see what happens on Monday, but again, by Tuesday after market, we will have all of this to look forward to coming out. Curaleaf's going to do big numbers. Then I cannot wait to see what Green Thumb does, Air Wellness as well, Trulieve, and then Cresco Labs last. So last thing to point out, Harvest Health and Recreation has not announced their earnings date yet. That will come. But I hope you enjoyed this video, folks. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Are you still bullish? Did you end up selling last week, and do you regret it? Or did you get to average down and load up on more shares? Because ultimately, when you look at the underlying factors and you see all the positive momentum behind us, you can make it through last week. You're on the road to be a successful investor. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave a like and subscribe so that you don't miss any new ones, and I will see you Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.